This is the big one. The one that has everyone talking. Yes, indeed, we're talking about the brand new Rolex Submariner. And not just any brand new Submariner, it is the Kermit. It has a 41mm steel case, a COSC certified in-house caliber and a 70-hour power reserve. It's 300 meters water resistant and it costs around 9,000 euros. And normally I'm not that fond of such expressive watches, but this is actually quite a special one. Because Rolex hardly ever does anything this expressive with the sub. Sure, of course, there are the gold versions, but they're in their own playing field. This one will go down as the most eccentric sub ever made. This is something different because it's green and black. Because green and black, you rarely see those colors together. Now there is a golden rule in men's fashion that says you shouldn't mix black with blue. But those rules, they don't apply anymore. A lot of guys are wearing blacks with blues and it does look very good. Now this one might show that green and black actually could work as well. And it must be said, it works very well on the wrist. But there's a problem here, something I really should get off my chest. There's a lot of nonsense going around online in blogs and in videos about Rolex. People try to make this very mythical brand. And what attracts everyone about this company is obviously the perceived brand value of money. Showing a Rolex means fulfillment for people who equal money to success in life. And that is to me the biggest disadvantage of wearing a Rolex. You're immediately that guy with the Rolex. And having actually visited all 4 manufacturing sites of Rolex in Switzerland, it's time to put a little bit more reality into this mythical illusion. Because at its core, Rolex doesn't see itself as a real luxury company. They more see themselves as an engineering company. It's more like Porsche than Tiffany's. And they actually do think more in terms of evolution than revolution. They rather make hundreds of thousands of impeccably running, sturdy and reliable watches than reinvent the rules of nature. And a lot of people are actually guessing about how much of the production is actually done by machines versus human beings. Well, a lot of machines are involved, but only for those things that cannot be done by human hands. Quality first, efficiency second. That's what Rolex production is all about. Machines are only used when they guarantee a better quality, but human beings are still at the center of the production. In Bienne alone, where the R&D and movement productions are located, Rolex has some 2,500 employees, and they're working under the most strict conditions, and all the watches are tested to the toughest standards. And yes, actually all of them are tested, cased and uncased. So you will find every Rolex with this 32-35 caliber far more accurate than the chronometer standards, and even water tested until 25% above that 300 meters. And that's not all, because these specs are solid as Kilimanjaro. It even has a high-tech homemade parachrome hairspring that leaves it completely cold-hearted in the face of magnetism. I once interviewed a guy who works at an oil rig, and he told me he actually attached his deep sea to a Submariner that went to the sea bottom. After a few days, it came up again. And guess what? The watch was still running. It was only a little bit smelly, he told me. And when I told this story to Rolex, they just laughed and they were proud. We love these kind of people, they said. We love people who test our products because this is what they're for. So yes, this really is one of the most over-engineered pieces of mechanics you'll ever see. This really will tick until the end of time, or until it runs out of power reserve. But what I'm trying to say here is, if Rolex signs off on a movement, they never want to see it back in Geneva. And to achieve that, their quest for reliability is unlike any other brand in the business. And that's what makes Rolex so special. They're engineers. These watches just keep running forever. And there's one more thing about this new sub that's a revolution in Rolex terms. Its size. For the first time, it comes in a 41mm. Now that doesn't sound much, but to Rolex, this is growing from cat to tiger. And what's more, they even enlarged the power reserve from 48 to 70 hours. The bracelet also wears very comfortably. I've actually been told that Rolex have actually redesigned the entire bracelet to fit this extra large size. And I think it actually looks better. It's just a little bit smoother. And there's one more thing, and I wish I could lie about it, but I have to be honest. It's just so appealing. It looks so good. It's like I want to get married to it. I want to live forever with it because it's just, it feels so good on the wrist, honestly. Wearing this watch just makes you feel very special in a way that's not really explainable. And maybe that's just a feeling of having the world's most famous luxury watch on the wrist. And how it became this famous? Well, there's a lot of stories to be told about this, but one thing is sure, James Bond helped with this. And it's actually quite a coincidence, because when QB Broccoli wanted to buy a Rolex, the movie budget wasn't really sufficient. Also, Rolex said, we're not gonna give you a watch for the movie. So what Mr. Broccoli did is he gave his watch to Sean Connery, and the movie was filmed with the Submariner of Broccoli on Connery's wrist. And there's also been a lot of persistence. Like the Porsche 911, the Submariner has only evolved, and there wasn't much revolution to it. It is basically still the same watch as it was 50 years ago. And they've also been very, let's say, stubborn with their communication. They've always sent exactly the same message. The evolution of the piece has always been about sturdiness, accuracy and reliability. That's it. And finally, there's also a lot of luck involved, because no one could ever imagine 50 years ago what the power of a Rolex on Instagram would be. And talking about fashion, I finally have a small word for guys who think about Rolexes as investments. I say forget about it. With your lack of imagination, you've ruined a lot of the appeal of this brand for a lot of people who actually love watches. So go find another hobby. Go collect boats or yachts or cars or whatever. Not Rolexes anymore. Get lost. Now, with that cleared out of the way, it is time to answer a question more important than who invented the world. Is this watch cock or is it cool? Ooh, now that is a cooler score than the previous Submariner we had on the show. And it's actually easy to see why. Because that black and green just make this watch come alive unlike anything else. So, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about the Submariner? In essence, it is a very reliable, very accurate and very valuable watch. And if you wear it, I promise you, you will fall in love with it forever and ever. But remember one thing, you will be always the guy with the Rolex, period. And to finish it all, just one question to you. Do you think I should actually review the Rolex Perpetual Oyster as well? I must say I was kind of impressed by especially the steel gold version. And of course, leave all other comments as well, and please subscribe to my channel. Thank you and see you next time.